They flew in the dead of the night in outdated planes made of wood and canvas. In the air, they battled frostbite and bullets. On ground, they battled skepticism and sexism. But that didn't stop them from becoming the group of people who terrified the Nazis so much that when you shot one down, you would earn the Iron Cross. Those are the Night Witches, the all-female Soviet pilots who turned the skies into a nightmare for fascists. They were called the Night Witches or the Nachthetzen by the Nazis because of the whooshing sound that their wooden planes made resembled that of a sweeping broom. Not to mention, they were very embarrassed that they were being taken out by women, and so they would tell people that they had supernatural powers, when really these were just women determined to not give up in the face of fascism. They were part of the 588th Night Bomber Regiment, an all-female Soviet Air Force unit during World War II. Formed in 1942, they were commanded by Major Marina Razkova, who convinced Stalin to allow women to serve as combat pilots. Razkova was known as the Soviet Amelia Earhart, famous not only as the first female navigator in the Soviet Air Force, but also for her many long-distance flight records. In the Soviet Union, women were allowed to participate in support roles, but there were many women who wanted to do more. They wanted to be soldiers, they wanted to be gunners and pilots, and they wanted to fly on their own. Many of them had lost brothers, fathers, sweethearts, and seen their homes and villages absolutely torn apart by the Nazi invaders. As the Germans pressed in towards Moscow, they were desperate for people to join in the forces, and so while women were not their first choice, that was kind of what they had at the time. As numbers dwindled, Stalin gave the orders to deploy 3 all-female Air Force units. The women would fly missions and drop bombs, but they would also return fire, making the Soviet Union the first nation to officially allow women to engage in combat. As soon as the call went out, women started pouring in to try and fill the unit. From more than 2,000 applications, 400 women were selected for each of the units. The women in the regiment were mostly in their late teens and early 20s, students, teachers, and workers who traded in their ordinary lives for combat boots and flight jackets. As for equipment, they were not given standard issue state-of-the-art anything. They were given pretty much whatever could be found. Their planes were Polikarpov Po-2 biplanes. They were slow, fragile, and pretty outdated training planes that were made of mostly wood and canvas. They had no instruments with radar, and they navigated simply by compass and maps, relying on their skills and nerves to keep themselves going. However, there was an advantage. The planes were so light that they barely registered on German radar, making them absolutely perfect for stealth missions. The Night Witches would fly in groups of 3, 2 to draw enemy fire and 1 to drop bombs. They completed over 30,000 missions and dropped 23,000 tons of bombs on Nazi targets. Each plane carried only 2 bombs at a time, and so the women had to fly multiple missions each night. When their very light planes flew over the Nazis, the wind would whoosh over the wings, and that was pretty much the only sound you could hear. Sounded like the sound of a broomstick, and that's how they got their name. With these tiny, outdated planes, they were incredibly effective at disrupting German supply lines and demoralizing their troops. The Nazis were so terrified of the Night Witches that any German soldier who could prove they shot down one of the Night Witches was instantly awarded the Iron Cross, one of their highest military honors. In turn, the accomplishments of the Night Witches were absolutely incomparable. 23 of the personnel from the regiment were awarded the title Hero of the Soviet Union, 2 were awarded the Hero of the Russian Federation, and 1 was awarded the Hero of Kazakhstan, which were essentially the highest honors of the time. The last flight of the Night Witches took place on May 4th, 1945, when the Night Witches flew within 60 kilometers of Berlin. 3 days later, Germany officially surrendered. From 1942 until 1945, they went on about 30,000 missions total, or about 800 per pilot and navigator. In the line of duty, they lost about 30 pilots, including Razkova, the mother of the movement. She died on January 4th, 1943, when she was finally sent to the front line. Her plane never made it. She was given the very first state funeral of World War II, and her ashes were buried in the Kremlin. The Night Witches were the most highly decorated unit of the Soviet Air Force during the war, But unfortunately, the regiment was disbanded 6 months after the end of World War II. But their mark on the war and on history is absolutely indelible. These women were given every opportunity not to succeed. They were flying in open airplanes made out of wood in sub-zero temperatures. They wore uniforms that were too big for them. All of the uniforms that the regiment wore were actually fitted for men, and they had to tear up blankets and stuff to make sure that the shoes would not fall off their feet. And they used their own bed sheets as parachutes. But despite being under-equipped and totally underestimated, they shattered Nazi morale and proved that women could fight and win. Their resolve at fighting fascism, their defiance, their courage, their resilience make them women that we should definitely remember during Women's History Month. Part of being in the Night Witches was having a little pledge that you would say. And it basically boils down to be proud. Be proud you are a soldier. Be proud you are a woman. Women can do so much. Women can be so powerful. And I very much hope that we are truly harnessing our power and using it to fight fascism and injustice in our own lives.